All
we able
right.
to?
Yeah. Okay. We're live now.
So how do I record it?
No, I'm recording now.
Okay, so you can get that to me then, or what?
Yeah, I can send you the
Okay,
recording
I got a
afterwards.
bit
Yeah.
of light. I got a little too much light going on here. Oh, my bald head, I think.
Mm.
All right. So, do you want to begin, or do you want me to begin? Where do we begin?
Well, I think you should begin. Yeah, you said you were watching. So just before you
Yeah,
were watching.
just
Which one?
before, well, I'd watched it before, but I was rewatching it,
Okay.
and so I've been working on this the last few days, and it's again this the language itself is a problem. So I've been working on, thing. What exactly is thing nothing? And when you said paradox is the difference between perception and conception, well, that's what I come to as well, is that there's a difference there. But to me, I come at everything from a spiritual standpoint, which means that I take the Hindu metaphors to be the ones that I use, because I find them all to be metaphors anyway. So I believe that it's all because of Maya. I believe that all of this is just a game, and the game is to escape the game, right? All of this, the purpose of all of this is to basically end all of this. It's like a labyrinth, right? Or a puzzle. So I guess I may be jumping ahead to the why all of this is happening. But see, the paradox is, so a thing, when it defines a thing, it says it's an object. Basically, it says it's an object with qualities, right? But a thing is not. So that's how it's relating to the concept of thing. But a thing actually is a combination of sensual experiences, right? It's a combination of senses. That's what a thing is. It's an experience of senses. But that's not what the definition is it? It doesn't say a thing is a combination of senses, right? An experience of senses. It relates it to object. And then when you go and try to find out what an object is, well, the definition of an object is that it's a fucking thing. So it literally goes, a thing is an object, and then an object is a thing. So it's just a self-referential bootstrapping that really has no meaning to it.
Yeah. Okay, so just to contextualize everything, for if anyone's watching this and trying to understand what it is we're talking about, I rewatched your video explaining the Triune system, and so yeah, I kind of want to zoom out a lot for everyone.
Yeah, I forget that there's people.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're talking about is metaphysics, and metaphysics ultimately is the study of being and identity and understanding the fundamental principles of reality. So having said that, there are different systems. The system that you subscribe to is the Hindu system. Now, for all intents and purposes, for me, like you, I've watched quite a bit of your stuff, so I'm going to repeat some things, and I think you'll recognize that I have heard a lot of what you're saying.
Okay.
And for me, it is also a discovery. It's revealed. It's because we all have access to the same reality, or there really only is a truth. So I on my own discovered the very same thing that Hinduism describes. So for all intents and purposes, I am also Hindu in a lot of ways. Like, I believe that there's a lot. I haven't read much of the Gitas or the Vedas, but I've understood the core concepts of what they describe when it comes to metaphysical reality, and this is exactly in line with what I've discovered. And so the only thing that I don't like about Eastern philosophy, or what I disagree, I would say, is that they also kind of take a certain authority at some point when it comes to the why. So I would say, for example, not to be antagonistic, but where does one get the authority to say that reality, God, or the highest abstraction, the universe, energy, whatever someone wants to use like word Maya, where does one get the authority to say that the object of the game or the purpose of the game is to get out of the game? I think, that's much too human centric, and it's as much as it might be true that you'll release yourself from suffering to just be in between the two thoughts. I think it's too human centric to think that Maya or God would create something as a game to divert itself. I mean, I think it's much more superior than that. We don't understand purpose enough to say that it's a game we have to get out of or that we have to do anything other than actually be. So there's a book that I read about, I think it's a Taoist book. It's an interesting story. And it was about a monk or like a 6-year-old Chinese aristocrat who his family was basically in charge of like a lot of land, and they had a lot of responsibilities. Anyway, they sent him to Taoist monks on a mountain to train. They spoke very highly of these monks. They said, we want you to learn all the wisdoms and talents and everything. Like, these are very highly respectable men. And of course, the kid goes for like, I think it's a training of like 10, 12 years. He comes back as a young man anyway. And he tells his parents that, he wants to become a monk. He's going to stay on the mountain. And then they completely switch game. They say, no, these men are horrible people. Why would you want to be a bum? You're just going to waste your life away. You've turned your back on your responsibilities to take charge of the empire that we were building. So it's an interesting thing. And in that book, I think the moral of the story, of the whole story, is that it's true that you can be God, be silent and be God. But at the same time, if you're going to participate in the world, there's a reason you're here, to be the limited being that you are. And so to me, Eastern philosophy seems to like do great to like release people from suffering and to understand and tap into the universal self, as I call it. But they still shun this idea that, hey, we have a role to play. There's a whole reason we're here. And that, so I think it's more life affirming. So I think it's both. Like, you need to stay silent when you need to realize that you're God and you need a release from the suffering. But you also need to be aware that you are participating in whatever it is Maya is doing. So the participation to me is where I would say I not disagree. I just disagree that we have to choose this human-centric view that we have to escape this. I don't believe in the samsara. I would say that it's both. There is a samsara, and for whatever reason, we can't really say what its purpose is. But I do have a fundamental understanding of what absolute purpose is, insofar as we should understand it, in my view. But I don't want to get into that right away. I'm just curious, what do you agree? Am I shifting your view or not on that issue?
Well, you used the word reason a few times there. So if you're going to say that there's a reason,
Mm-hmm.
then there has to be a reason. There has to be an explainable, relatable reason, right?
Sure.
Because you just stated,
Using,
so there
yeah,
can't be a bunch of reasons.
I
There has to
agree.
be only one reason.
There is a reason. The reason, though, I would say is, have you heard of Occam's razor?
Of course.
Okay, so the least amount of assumptions. This is how I've developed my philosophy. And I think that is an assumption that's unnecessary to make, that the whole point is to get out of the simulation or whatever. So to me, if we use Occam's razor a little bit more tightly, you would say you would get closer to that reason. And I think that reason is definitely that we have to participate. There's a reason we're here to participate. Now that I don't have an answer to exactly, but I do have an answer as to how we can understand absolute purpose.
I don't have the problem offering up that reason. Like, I don't have a problem just making that leap and saying, this is it.
Yeah.
Like, I've worked on this for decades,
Yeah.
and this is what I've come to, right? So I don't have a problem making that leap.
The Kierkegaard leap of faith, I think, is absolute. I mean, that's what paradoxism, that's the name of my philosophy, by the way. It requires the leap of faith that you believe that a paradox, it indicates truth. Now, it's both. So I agree with you, Roy. There is and there is no paradoxes. So even the fact that paradoxes are paradoxes is paradoxical. So I think that I do believe in the triune system. The way you've laid it out is brilliant. And the only thing that I feel what's interesting about how we could come together is that my philosophy uses duality to achieve the triune system. So like, because we are beings of differentiation, we have no choice to think that way. So how can we think about things paradoxically to achieve the third aspect? And so if you think about it, a triune is necessarily composed of duality. I mean, you do have to have two other things. So to me, it's thesis,
in order to
synthesis.
describe it, you do. In order to describe it, you need two.
Exactly.
But in order to be it, you don't need any of that.
Exactly. But here's the thing. You necessarily need to describe it to someone to point to the moon, like you had said, right? At some point. So
yeah,
that's why we do need to use duality on some level to reach the triune system.
See, I have the kind of the opposite of that, is that the reality, that is the natural state, and the appearances arise from that. So you're saying that you can't start with two, right? There's no way to start with two, is there? Like, that just intuitively is impossible. You always have to start with one.
Yes, but
so you can't have a system that's dualistic.
It's both. It's both. That's the beauty of it. It's you have to look at it like from the reason that you see the reason
one has to be real and one has to be illusory if they're both.
Yes, but that's what I'm trying to say is like it's easy for you to start from 1 to 2 because you are enlightened. You have understood that. But my philosophy is to help people get to that through a description, not through personal experience. So like, you know what I mean? I think that's the golden ticket. I mean, you can meditate and realize it like directly at some point, but it's very difficult. It takes a long time and you may never get there. Whereas if there was a description that could really point people enough, I mean, it would still be a matter of experience. They'd have to experience it for themselves. But is there a description that can get close enough to help them bump into that? Because you're from the other side. It's like easy to do it from the other side. It's easy to see it that way from the other side, and that is the truth. But how are you going to get to that truth? How are you going to get to that side to begin with? Like you said, the natural state. Well, you have to deal with the limited state, the human state first. And I think that's what my philosophy does. It just tries to put you on that boundary so that maybe you'll like flip over and you're going to see, it isn't two. There is no duality. There is just one.
That substance. Appears as two. One appearing as two.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, with the paradox thing. So here's, and to me, I always want to bring it back to Maya because it just settles the picture in my mind better. Mm-hmm. Right. And the reason why I enjoy the why, tap dancing on the why line, is that there's this shift occurring within consciousness that Maya is moving, like, I don't know, the accepted fundamental reality is moving from physical to non-physical. And that's where this, you know, the yin and the yang and the pendulum swinging back and forth, right? So paradox is when human consciousness is taking the conceptual part to be on equal level as the perceptual part, right? So human consciousness is in this kind of nether world, in this transitionary period of moving from accepting the physical realm and sensations as being fundamental to moving into thoughts, which I take to be non-physical, that realm to be fundamental. And that's where paradox is, where that meets, right? That's kind of like the twist in the Mobius strip that gets you to the other side, right? That's where the paradox is. But see, which one's more real? Like, to me,
it makes no sense to say that to me. Like the paradox is the gateway, but that's the beauty of it. I mean, once you realize that there is
that's samsara. That's what I'm saying, is that this is samsara. It's just changing one appearance to be fundamental to the other appearance, and this huge shift is right at the end of physical.
The vacillation between two things, that there is no two things. I mean, ultimately, if there is one fundamental reality, then physical world and non-physical world, that just disappears. There's no need to make that differentiation. That's another
But
duality.
there is, because it can't be just one thing. There has to be, you can't just say everything's one thing and one thing is that it has to be like a system, like I describe as a mirror, right?
Yeah.
So there's the reflection of it,
Yeah.
but there's the real thing, right?
This is what I'm trying to say, is like it's circular. I mean, it is both. That's why I'm saying the ultimate paradox is that there is both one thing and many things at the same time. Like that's really what I mean. Think about it, infinity. Like it's so simple. You look at a line, and any point on that line, like beginnings and endings, that line is a series of beginnings and endings, which itself has no beginning and ending. So, it's this loop that we go back and forth, and we say, is there one thing or two things? Is that one thing composed of two things? Like it has to be, right? So to me, there's no need to debate that and say there's only one substrate or there are many. I mean, it's both. That's why I'm saying we have to say it's both. Now, to
But it's
us,
not both, because if you say that it's both, you're admitting that it's a dualistic system.
No, it's not dualistic.
You said it's both, which means it's a dualistic system.
No, that's the beauty of it. Here's where I'm going to try to get you into the meta paradox, because if you say it's both, look at that now. The fact that it's both is one thing. Do you see? And that's infinitely regressive. So
the both is the reality. That's what I'm saying, is that it's a superposition.
Exactly. Right? That's exactly the word.
That is the Tao. That is the zero. That is the nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying, is like people often go around these circles. It's one thing or it's two things. It's like, no, it's both. And that is one thing and two things. And that's infinitely regressive. And so it makes no sense to say there's one reality or many realities. That's the error. But it's not really an error. It's just we are beings of differentiation. That's how we function. And so, that I believe is the purpose that we have. That's what Maya is doing, in a sense, is that we have some kind of purpose insofar as differentiating and creating things. I like what Peterson said about the way he said this in one talk. He said, what would a limitless entity have like limitation? Now, right away, someone would think, well, that doesn't make sense to say. It's kind of paradoxical. But he kind of blows you away. He says there would be a limit to a limitless entity. And it would be that it would have no limitation. So not having a limit is in itself a limit. Therefore, it must create an entire world.
That statement doesn't make sense.
No, but I mean, on this level of abstraction, you can say things don't make sense, but ultimately they're paradoxical. The fact that they make sense or don't make sense doesn't really matter on the level of human logic. You just let me finish and you understand. So like, if a limitless entity has no limitation, then it's not truly limitless, because it's a limit in itself to not have limitation. And so it must create an entire world, a series of limited things. So space and time, matter, people, energy, whatever. There's so many limited things that renders the limitless entity complete. Now, I know you disagree, but I believe that consciousness creates void so as to be complete as well. So you need nothingness in order. That's why we can never look. Mathematicians, physicists, and Eastern philosophy, they always try to get away from nothingness, and yet they never can. And there's a reason for that, because consciousness creates it. It's true. It doesn't exist. Nothingness can't exist logically, but it exists as a concept, and consciousness creates it so as to be complete. So it's like the most complete you can get. Really, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So. Yeah, we have very subtle differences that when they expand, they become huge differences.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was trying to understand. Like, why is it that we agree but disagree? And again, to me, that's always a sign. Like, it's never a good or bad thing. I don't see that as a bad thing. I actually see it as a good thing, which is
this is why I developed or witnessed the Triune model and then adapted the language of thing and nothing to fit it, because we have to get rid of the conceptualization of nothing, because it's incorrect. It is in error. And it's another one of these things where Maya is trying to convince us that the thought realm is as substantial as the sensual realm, right? And don't get me wrong. I know you say it's meaningless to say that, but in context, it isn't, because this is still fundamental. Like, this is still the accepted fundamental reality, but it's the yang version, right? So now we're swinging back to the yin, and now that realm, when with this transition is taken, when this transition is done, that thought realm will be taken to be fundamental reality. And then we'll be asking questions about, well, maybe this thing realm is fundamental. What is that all about, right? Because we'll have forgotten the whole thing. But to me, the whole point of all of this, the point of it, is that infinity itself is an expression of samsara, right? That's what infinity is. The number system, to me, is another holographic expression of samsara. And that's the game, right? Who would ever want to be trapped in an infinite, redundant time loop?
Yeah, right? But that's the thing. I mean, we don't as human beings, but that's why we die, right? Like, to me, the highest
dying
level
has nothing to do with it. Dying just is another cycle, right? It's just another 1 to 10 cycle starting at 11 again.
But all I'm saying is that when you say, like, who would want to be trapped, I don't think the highest level of abstraction, like the highest level of consciousness, the fundamental reality, I don't think it experiences things that way. I think that's applying a human-centric worldview, that there's a game to be played or there's something to escape. I just don't see how we can make that leap from where. I mean, if we want to understand the why, this is where we really start to diverge, really. I think we understand, like, the issue of language and how it makes it difficult to reach the triune state and to see things and all that. I think where we really diverge is the leap of faith and the why. So, like, and again, I think this is where I'd have to start describing my philosophy a little bit more. But before I do that, I also just want to go further into the concept percept thing, just so you understand accurately what I mean. So, to me, when we perceive, it's channeling information about the physical world, which, again, I think ultimately there is no physical world, it's just all one thing. But the way we experience things is that we're channeling information, and that is a perception. Now, that's limited because we are limited beings. You cannot perceive everything. So then what we do with these perceptions, these bundles, is we bundle perceptions together, and then we create concepts. So a concept is just like a way to go further, to achieve an even further level of understanding without the perceptions, because we can't actually perceive everything. But if we put enough perceptual bundles together, we create a concept out of those bundles, then we can operate higher levels of meaning in the world. And I think that's why humans are much more different than other animals, right? We're able to have higher levels of conceptual ability. So to me, the paradox is simply something that occurs when you have a concept that in consciousness that you already have. It's a priori. So because we are part of the universal consciousness, we do know that infinity exists. I mean, that's why people, when they smoke pot and meditate or make love, whatever the fuck, they feel enlightened. They feel expanded into the universe. They feel part of everything, right? They're infinitely expanded. They feel existential. Well, the reason for that is because it's a priori. We are that, and the concept is there. We'll never get rid of the concept. So it's a priori truth that we naturally have. But when we're trying to perceive infinity, which we can't with our limited bodies and our physical thing, that's where the experience of a paradox occurs. So to me, a paradox is the delineation, a boundary where perception ends and where conception begins. It's where our concept of infinity is there and our limited perceptions end. And so it is pointing to the truth. It is the gateway to the truth. Now, a very specific kind of paradox called an antinomy, and the other one's called a dialetheia. There are other paradoxes that are veridical and falsidical, so it's just an error in human thought. But these two special paradoxes, they really are the boundary of truth. And I just made a website. It's still not quite finished yet, but it'll take people through on a step-by-step basis to help them understand,
So, but why do we? What I get to, like the level that I'm zooming in on, is this the substantialness of thought itself. Like, thought really has nothing to do with sensations. It really is not relating to the physical realm. I know it sounds like a crazy person talking, but
I agree, though. I agree. It's because there is no physical realm. You're saying it's related to the physical realm, and the reason I agree with you is because I think the error you're making is using the language that you said is flawed. And
that's
the
the problem, is that everyone's using this language and it's flawed at the very, very core of it. The whole thing and nothing dualistic, materialistic system is complete. It makes no sense. You start getting into it, and it breaks down. It all breaks down once you start getting into it.
That's what I'm saying. To me, I think you need the caveat first. You first have to say there is no physical world, and then that just leverages you. It kind of shoehorns you out of that issue, right?
Well, that's kind of a sidestep, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, you need to. I mean, necessarily so I know what you mean, but I mean, is it better like trying to muddle through the confusion caused by the language, or is it better to sidestep it so you can
it's
sort of
better to transcend thought, because it's all nonsense.
Yeah, but to me, like, I think I don't even want to make a distinction between the physical world and the thought world.
But then we can't really talk, right? We need dualism to at least discuss. We need dualism to form the finger, right?
Yeah, I know. But
we need it to be not abstract. That's the problem, is that there's so much ambiguity when we don't make these distinctions, like here's the physical world and here's the mental world, and they're different, right? Thoughts are not things. Concepts are not things.
But already I think that's a smaller sandbox, and we can go further. Like, that's why I don't talk about the physical world and the thought world. In my philosophy, all I talk about is existence and non-existence, like void. And you have, because
my triune system shows that there cannot be non-existence, right? So again,
no, I think that's the semantics.
What's that?
I think it's the semantics. I see it clearly. I mean, in the middle row, the green row, you have zero, right? You have God. You have, to me, that is nothingness. I mean, whether that's so, is there nothingness?
Our concept of nothing is wrong, right? Our concept of nothing is that it's not a thing. It's the lack of something. It's a lack. It isn't something in and of itself. It's the opposite. It's the other than something else, not even other of. That's what I'm saying in some of my videos. I say there needs to be a distinction between other of and other than as well, right? Because other of means that it's a triune, and other than means that it's this. It's one has to be the non-existence of the other, and it doesn't work. That's why my model fixes the whole language in my mind. It does.
Well, I don't know. I think like they can coexist, because like, so there's a guy named Robert Lawrence Kuhn. He has this show called Closer to Truth. I don't know if you're aware of it. Anyway.
Yeah, I know of it.
Okay, so I've corresponded with him a couple years ago, and he sent me his paper on the 9 levels of nothingness. So he sent me this, and it strips the language really, and it actually really gets you to void, to nothingness, really, because he says, like, there are levels of nothingness, and on the like last level, the ninth level of nothingness, that's where we can start debating whether nothingness exists or not. So like people think of physical and non-physical, but I mean, there's so much more than that. I mean, information, for example, is that a thing, right? There's all these 9 levels. I think you should read it. It's actually quite interesting. But the point is, um, to me, if we're going to have to use language, then we have to use Occam's razor and achieve like or use the term that strips away the most assumptions about what is or what there isn't. So in order to do that and to understand what void is, whether it's something or it's nothing, I know it's kind of labyrinthian.
Thing is the wrong word. Thing is
Yeah,
a
yeah,
bad word.
you're right. I mean, so here's the thing. I
Here's the
ironically,
thing, right? Like you can't
yeah,
avoid it.
you can't avoid it, but even if you say no non-things, like that's why I like to use the word void, because it's a word in itself. It stands on its own, and now we can attribute to it what we mean by void. Now, is it something that has? Is it a thing or is it a non-thing? And we can first say that it's a concept that we have.
Mm-hmm.
That's really being as clean as we can be.
Mm-hmm.
So where to go from there? Now, what is that concept? How does it work? Before we even debate whether it exists or doesn't exist, all we know is that the concept exists. And why is the question. Not does it or to try to prove it, right?
Yeah, why it exists is because Maya is playing us like a freaking.
And that's what I'm saying. You're making an assumption. I mean, who's to say Maya? Where do you get the authority for that, right? Why do you say Maya is like playing a trick on us? I mean,
Well,
why would it?
the same authority that has the authority to ask why. Where do you get the
True.
authority to ask why?
Aren't we Maya, right?
Yeah,
So are we
but
playing a trick on
you mean
ourselves?
the appearance? You mean the appearance of Roy Dopson? That is God
Not,
appearing as Roy Dopson?
yeah, in that sense, I kind of see it in a pantheistic fashion. Yeah.
Yeah, so God is appearing as James Soros and
Yeah, like
Roy
I'm
Dopson.
looking at you. Like I'm looking at myself looking at you and you're doing the same thing. Like you know
Yeah,
what I mean? I'm looking at
it's the
me.
same awareness that's looking through both sets of eyes.
Yeah, that's the way I see it. But it's also experiencing itself through everything. I think there's consciousness, inherent in all matter. I mean, but um pure pantheistic view basically makes sense to me. But anyway, so you can see like where I think you're standing in it and I'm standing like on the other side. I've been there, but I'm just trying to like lead people to the experience that you're having. So I believe that I'm having a better description, but you're having the actual experience and showing people through the experiential route.
Well, I don't
um,
see again. I just don't see how there can be a better description. I don't know what better means.
yes.
Like better is also subjective. For some people, your approach will be better, obviously,
Yeah, yeah,
but succinct, right? Or
yeah,
yeah, succinct
yeah.
or efficient. You can't get more efficient or succinct than the triune model. Like again, it has nothing to do with me. I just recognized it.
Yeah.
And because the triune model is the system from which dualism itself arises.
Right. I hope I'm gonna liberate you from some suffering. So I do feel that you're frustrated at how people can't accept and you're right, because here's what I'm gonna tell you. There's another paradox. I see paradoxes everywhere, as you can imagine. Here's the paradox. Your triune system is incredibly simple and it's beautiful. And the irony is that people cannot accept truth. You have to prove that truth is true, right? So it's not enough that you have the brilliant way to to understand it. Um, I just don't think it's enough, and that's why like you need a succinct vehicle that people can actually. You put them through the loops. Like you want to go complicated, I'll
You know
make
what,
you go
James?
complicated. You know?
I don't
Yeah,
care. I'm done
yeah,
trying to convince people and I'm done. I don't care about numbers. Either
yeah,
people see it or they don't. That's it. Right?
yeah,
Like I cannot make it any more clear. Right? I
yeah.
can't describe it any more clear than the model does itself.
You're right.
So
I think
I'm getting to the point where either someone sees it or they don't, and that's fine.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, I think that this is where I think maybe we just have different goals. My goal would be to, like, what I have. It's not a goal. I believe I've achieved it, but I believe that my description can shoehorn people into understanding the simple thing that you laid out.
Mm.
Right? That's the only thing that I think. And as for the qualms that we have over infinity and nothingness, whether it exists or
They're
doesn't exist, I think
pretty
that's the
minor,
trivial.
and they're not even really necessary. Like, it's not even really
Exactly.
necessary to even engage in the why, I guess.
Yeah.
As long as a person finds their happiness, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, here's the thing: we have to agree on one thing, and also we have to be genuine with ourselves. I think you from your website and from what I've seen, and I think from the community that we've met through, probably the Theories of Everything community, I think there is a responsibility that comes with understanding higher levels of abstraction, and we can see that the apocalypse has always been spoken of from the dawn of time. People have always thought it's the end of the world. But now, I mean, since the 50s, we've had the possibility of ending our world. And it is, I do think this really is the apocalypse this time. So
Yeah.
I think there is a responsibility that people like you and I do feel to share our knowledge so that we can, because ultimately, this is what I put in my book promo, because I'm writing a book, and I think that the issue is with our subjectivity, we're so limited. We were having to interpret the world through our subjectiveness, and it's causing all these like conflicts. But what if we can describe the objective reality in such a way that every subjective individual has to interpret that objective truth the same way? If you achieve that, you have created a foundation for truth that everyone can feel everything that their worldview is compatible, and therefore you can perhaps create structures and systems that will lead to higher peace. I mean, this is why religions have always been kind of syncretic, right? The two religions kind of meet up and then they form a new higher syncretic religion. We need a new mythos in the world, right? And guys
I,
like us, I think we're working towards that. But
dude, I
that's
want non-conceptuality to be that. Like, I hesitate to call it a religion, but I do want it to be the reset. Like, I really do think it's got the chops. But again, I know it's going to be for a very, very select few people, because what you're talking about requires actual introspection, right? It
yeah.
needs people to actually tear their fucking face away from the screen and indulge in some meditation and some introspection. But good luck getting them to do that, right? You can lead a human to freaking enlightenment, but you can't make it not think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's not our job to proselytize and to like spread the. I think that's evil. To be honest, that's one of the universal objective morals that we've understood quite clearly. I mean, it's not about bashing people over the head with it, but sharing what you do have for those who can go on and impacting the world in a certain way, I think is a responsibility that you can't turn your back on. Yeah.
Yeah,
But this
I'm
leads into another conversation, which is like, well, dealing with God. Uh, yeah, that was either yours or mine. I don't know, but we're back.
yeah. You're dealing with God, you said?
Dealing with God complex. I mean, you have
What?
to kind of believe that you do have the answers to be able to write a book or to like make the statements we're making. Like I've heard you say a couple of times, like, I know everything. Now there's the other guys like that. Like I don't know if you know Leo Gura. He's right up
Oh
your alley.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I know Leo. He banned me from his freaking from his
Really?
website. Yeah.
Oh my God. That's interesting. Why did you do that?
Well, I think because he checked out my stuff, and
So it wasn't like
I called him out. I said, yeah, Leo might know that he's God, but he doesn't know how to be God, right? He assumes that he's God, but he doesn't know how to be God. So that's why he only talks about infinity. He only talks about manifestation and creation. He never talks about conclusion. It's all just new experiences, right? So that's, well, hello, Leo, you're in Samsara. Like every single experience that you have, like this is another thing, is that every single experience that you have is fundamentally unsubstantial. Every single one of them, they all go away. So, I mean, if everything is unsubstantial, so here's another one. I don't know if you've seen me present this one before, but let's say that you have a desire, you want X, all right? So from that perspective, either you get X, right, or you don't get X. So when you get X, so let's say you don't get X, so that's kind of a bummer, right? Like that's a non-completion or an empty. There's some sort of a lack, right? If you don't get what you want, that's considered to be a negative thing, I guess. But then if you do get, even if you do get what you want, well, that thing passes. So then there will be a sense of loss, even if you get what you want. So either you don't get what you want, which is a bummer, or you get what you want, and then that eventually passes. So then you have suffering because that's a sense of loss. So where is anything substantial and meaningful and fulfilling in this realm?
It's strange because, my mentor, she's coming from a Buddhist background, and the way she got me into realizing and dissolving my ego and all that stuff, because I was, before I was still working on this philosophy, but I was still struggling with all this stuff. And she the way she described it is that you have to stop asking like, who am I? And you have to start asking like, what am I? And from there, you can observe the comings and goings of, you want something, you don't want something. It doesn't really matter whether you get it or you don't get it. So it's the observation of that X getting it, not getting it, or some getting Y instead, whatever. That observation is what releases you from the suffering and allows you to participate in the world as well, without just becoming a monk on a mountain, like I was saying. I mean, it's fine. You can do it. I mean, people can shun the world and just be God on a mountain, but clearly not everyone can do that. Not everyone will really receive enlightenment. So then what is the purpose of human life, right? And I think the purpose is to live your life, but you can do it by realizing that. I was talking to a friend today, and I grew up I'm from Canada, just like you. But I grew up super chaotic. I've lived in many different neighborhoods, cities, provinces. I grew up very unstable from the get-go. So I've had no ability to integrate any identity. And that kind of creates identity crisis and all that. And then you realize that someone's messaging me. It's just totally messing me up. Where was I going with that? Identity crisis had led me to understanding that. Oh, so yeah, I was speaking to a friend about that today. Ultimately, you people, when they grow up, they have an identity that they integrate right away. Like, I'm from this high school. I'm this is my race. This is my religion. This is my creed. Whatever. And they become prisoners of their identities. Like, they always do as much as they can to make sure that other people reflect back at them what they want to see. Like, I'm like, they're mirrors, right? You're a mirror, and you have to reflect back at me what I want to see about myself. And that's a fucking prison, right? So, but at the same time, you do have an identity. There, you are a certain age. You do look a certain way. You do have a certain personality, whatever. So, I think it's possible. You don't have to do. That's why I disagree with the Eastern religions. Like, they say, no, it doesn't exist. It's like, no, it does. You're here, obviously, clearly. Like, let's not shun the fact that there is an identity,
but it's not real. It exists, but it's not real.
To me, that's where I think it's not about saying real or not real, exists or doesn't exist. I think all we should say, if we want to be practical and try to figure out what to do, is to say, realize that what you are is not that, but that is the role you're playing at the moment. So it's possible to not be imprisoned, to integrate an identity, but not be imprisoned by it. I think it's possible to do that. I disagree with both the West and the East on that point. I think if we're going to reconcile the Eastern and Western philosophies, then I think we're going to have to necessarily use paradoxism. That's why I've created the philosophy.
The
But
only way to unify all that is to transcend thought, because religions are all thoughts, just like science is. It's all thought.
sure, yeah,
So
transcended.
again,
But
you
but
just
when
it's
you do
Ramana
it,
Maharshi, my friend. It's Ramana Maharshi.
yeah.
It's
But
sitting and
when you transcend
transcending
thought,
thought.
what happens? You're still going to operate in the world. Like you're right now, you're on your computer, you're talking to me, you go, you buy coffee, you have to, whatever. You still have to operate in the world, right? You're not choosing to sit there and just be transcended. You're still playing the role of Roy.
Very, very, very.
Yeah.
My life is very, very simple. I
Yeah.
don't. I engage in activity that stills my mind rather than gets it jacked up.
Sure, sure. But clearly, I think there's a role to play here. And even if humans didn't exist, there would still be things floating around, whether you call it energy, matter, whatever. There would still be planets, whatever. So to me, it's kind of like, clearly Maya is Maya, and there's no reason that we have to try to stop being Maya. Because when we're trying to stop being
But
human,
there is a natural movement to move away from suffering, to not want suffering, right? I believe that is the natural goal. That is the light of truth, if you will, that keeps us on the path, is suffering and happiness.
no, I don't think that's a good way to look at it. Even Nietzsche, which I used to agree with, like suffering is what we should be doing, and that's the purpose. It's like to me,
No,
it's neither.
suffering is what's telling us that we're off the path. The more you
But
suffer, the more you're in delusion.
yeah, yeah, I think, but it depends on. I think there's different types of suffering, right? Like to me, um, first off, define suffering and define happiness, right? I mean, it's like you said, it's so transitory. I mean, it just escapes you. It's like it's so fluid. When you're happy, it goes away. So that's why I like the Greeks. They came up. I think Aristotle said eudaimonia, which is fulfillment. It's not like that physical sensation of joy, right? It's you can be having the shittiest day. Your wife was cheating on you. You lost your job. The whole thing, right? But someone asks you, "Are you happy?" And to your definition, you say, "Yeah, absolutely." Like you wouldn't hesitate because that means fulfilled. You're transcended, all that. So to me, I don't think suffering and happiness is a good metric for deciding like what it is that humanity should be doing, right? Which is to either continue suffering, whatever that means, to become strong in the Nietzschean view, or to release ourselves from suffering and from being human. I think clearly there's a thing to be done here. And yes, we can move away from suffering. We don't have to cause it, right? Cause unnecessary suffering. But at the same time, we enjoy suffering. Suffering is joy. There's a level where you realize that there's also no differentiation. There's no duality there. I mean, look at sadomasochism, right? People love getting beat during sex. I mean, that's something enjoyable to some degree. And some people also feel suffering when good things are done to them because it actually undermines them, right? Like you don't want to be given everything. I mean, there's no joy in winning all the time. You want to have some resistance and competition in life too. So that's what I'm saying. That's another illusion, another duality that we're creating, suffering and joy. It's like, no, I mean, it's kind of like this, Roy. The Buddhists say this: if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. And I think that's another thing. When people say we have to release ourselves from samsara, I think they think that they've met the Buddha on the road. And of course, because wisdom is always more transcendent, it's like saying, oh, okay, I've found the Buddha, I'm done. I've found the wisdom. And the wisdom is we have to release ourselves from suffering. It's like, that's why they say kill the Buddha. There's many more Buddhas you're going to go, and then it'll never end, right? That's why I'm saying we can't look at it that way.
But it does end. It ends when thought ends, because those are all thoughts. You need what needs to happen is to delve into the thought process itself and to understand thought. What is its purpose? Why is it here? What's it doing? Because we just take for granted that there's this voice in your head that actually that's telling you some sort of truth or something. We just take it for granted. There's this no.
But do you see what I mean? Like, but you're talking about like thought has to end, right? But if thought ends, then there would be no issue there. But that's like human thought. That's not like Maya thought, which is thinking us.
The voice in your head. That's what I call thought, is the voice in your head. That's pretty simple, right? So once that is stilled, then something new is revealed, right? And that's what I'm saying, is that this is the next evolutionary step. Like, it's talk about human arrogance to think that our thinking mind is the highest level, right? It's
Absolutely.
ridiculous. Why is it that way? So what I'm saying is that there's another step in this process, and if we don't finish it soon, we'll be along for the ride for the next iteration of this huge cycle that then my number system shows it's going to happen right away, because we're at the 10.
But I think
again,
on the highest
nothing
level,
wrong. Let me just make sure that I'm not saying that any of this is wrong, right? There's nothing wrong with being here playing this game. But the purpose of the game is to find conclusion of the game. That's it.
And again, I think it's gonna rest on that linchpin, because I'm always gonna say, well, like, where do you get the authority to say that it's a game that Maya is playing and that it has to end? I think.
Well, that's what all major religions say, right? That's what moksha is. That's what nirvana is. That's what heaven is, right? Like, it's not too much of a leap to say that these three concepts, three fingers, that these major religions, where 3/4 of the fucking population calls themselves one of these things, that's what they're talking about. That's what nirvana literally is, right? That's what moksha is. And heaven, of course, is a more materialistic view, because it's a place, right? But it's transcendence of this realm. I didn't make that up.
But the question is, like, let's say all humans have transcended it. What about all the other matter that exists in the universe that we interact with, that composes us? I mean, is that also going through that evolution, right? That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, to me, if you really, really take it to its logical conclusion, and you don't use the duality of, because it's another duality there, another illusion, that there's a game and it has to be a conclusion. I think that's also another dual thinking kind of mode. And if you really, really eliminate all of that, you realize that there's nothing to be spoken of. Like, we shouldn't be talking at all.
You're negating the reason. Like, you say that there is a meaning and a reason to this, but then your argument that you're presenting right now is negating that statement. You're saying
I haven't said, though. I haven't actually said there's a reason.
What's that?
I don't believe I've said there is a reason for why everything is happening. Like, I haven't said that. I haven't said that. And I think that
but you did say that there's a purpose to life.
No, I've said that I've understood, like, how humans can interface with absolute purpose, like what it is to us. But on the highest level of abstraction, it makes no sense to say. And so this is why I sent you the title of this. I really think you should read it. It's called The 7 Sermons to the Dead. And it's Carl Jung who wrote it. He wrote his own Gnostic text, but he derived it from an earlier Gnostic text, early Christian sect. And it's called the Pleroma. And in it, he really describes how to think about the Pleroma, it's self-dissolution. It makes no sense to do it. Like, it's 12 pages long, man. It'll blow you away. It strips us from everything. And when I say everything, it's also this story of samsara. This is why I love Hinduism, because it's the closest thing. It describes the transcendence that we're talking about. But when it comes to samsara, then the why, the reason, I mean, if we're really being honest, like, reason is such a human thing. Purpose is such a human thing. We have to transcend that as well. Like, Maya, whatever it is, we will never understand with our human minds, like, its reason, its purpose, and why it's doing what it's doing. I mean, and if you really understood Maya, if you've really seen it, I really don't think you'll even ask those questions anymore. And so the question is, what is absolute purpose, insofar as understanding it as a concept? that's where I think we can end, but not trying to understand the absolute purpose of Maya. I think that's where it's applying our human-centric limitations and duality again to the whole thing.
So to me, when I say, so you come to a definition or a metaphor or an explanation for all of this. That's what the search is, right? We're basically searching for, I don't know, some sort of explanation, like down the thought road anyway, right? Is we're, and you have to just, the final theory of everything for you is the one where you realize, where you come to the realization that thought won't do it, right? You have to abandon thought. That is the final POE for a person, is when they realize whatever system of thought that they followed or whatever practice they followed, to realize that thought itself will never conclude. So therefore, I need to conclude it. That's the end of it, right? So there will never be a system of thought that comes up with a final answer that concludes all of the thought, right? So once you realize that, then you conclude the thoughts, right? That's what Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, Bell's theorem, right? Like all of these theorems that prove, but even though they prove it, people still go along thinking, right? So once you realize that thought cannot ever conclude, it will never conclude, then either you go, well, then I'm done with it, or you're just going to keep watching the fucking Mandelbrot set.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So you're absolutely, see, to me, that what you've said is the cleanest thing. It's clean. But that's what I'm trying to say. So after, because we are playing a role and we necessarily have to think, that's where we come up with these ideas like samsara and there's a game and Maya. And so to me, if you're going to apply the tenets of this worldview that you have, which is no worldview, non-thought, non-conceptuality, then you would necessarily also have to apply it to this concept of cycles and samsara. That's what I was curious about.
That's it. See, that's another beautiful thing about my theory, is that it concludes itself, right? Like every single theory. So again, once you understand a message, you don't have to keep going back to the message, right? You get it, right? There's an interpretation, and you go, aha, now I just go and do it, right?
Well, exactly. There is no theory. There's just a practical thing to be done.
So my finger that points to the moon, it dissolves, right? My theory dissolves into the practitioner. It goes away, right? So that again is the conclusion of all thought. And I use the metaphor of, see, this is where my consciousness says, well, this is as close as I'm going to get, right? This is the best metaphor. I believe that this is the best, and I think you'll agree that the best we can come up with ever is a metaphor. It'll never be fact.
But then the question is this, Roy. Here's the question: like, we're still here for that. So then it's all about how do you live practically? Like, how do we move forward? Like, if we're going to play the game that we know is just a game, it's just thought based. How do we play it well, and do we play it and all that? And we have no choice to play it anyway. So that's what I'm trying to say is like,
I don't see again.
You think that there is a choice that
you have no choice? Then there's another limit, right? On a limited being.
We can debate that too, but I mean, the fact that you're existing and you're here right now, I mean, it's almost like nihilism, right? I mean, if you're a nihilist, then you would just go and kill yourself if you really, acted by your own belief system. So it's the same thing, I think, with enlightenment. I mean, if you really think you have a choice, you would just commit suicide. Which is why I think a lot of these cults, they do that. Like these like enlightened gurus who maybe have tapped into this, but then they go and they get people to drink the Kool-Aid and they just like release themselves. So to me, it's like, okay, you can do that, but the fact that you're still here living and breathing, and that is the thing that you have no choice in doing. And so that's what I'm trying to say is what kind of philosophy or method or thought structure, which would be incomplete, can we could come up with that would just, like give us a practical, way to move forward, to lead humanity into the nothingness, right? So that's where I believe paradoxism is the answer, because it's one of the answers, but that's the beauty of it. I mean, it necessarily, a paradox is what? It's a combination of two polarities that are connected. So it's self-balancing. And in fact, that balance point shifts over time because everything is fluid, right? So that's why I believe, like, I crystallize paradoxes in a way, and there's paradoxes in many different facets. And ultimately, if you think about it, like even our law structures, like a lot of our political structures and mathematics, it all rests on these like contradictions, and we're just floating.
Other than
yeah,
like the governmental system and the legal system are other thans. They're not
exactly.
other. Yeah.
So because how do they,
a system like that isn't going to prevail. It's in constant conflict with itself.
Yes, and that's why, like, here's the thing: it can be in conflict with itself, or because it has no choice, right? There's polarities, or we can realize that it's a paradox, which means that there is no duality, right? And then it's balanced.
Because it's superposition, and they're both other ofs rather than other thans.
Yes.
Yes, so but Roy, it's the superposition that is the reality, though, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
So think about this, Roy. This is where it's revolutionary. What if we were to create structures, we supplant the current structures that we have, and we create systems of a superposition, so that we're not choosing.
That's what my Triune system is, and you fucking know it, my friend.
Dude, okay, so you see what I mean? So
yeah.
we would not apply our philosophies to the existing systems. We would supplant them, because here's the beauty of it. With the Triune system or paradoxism or whatever, you don't ever have to make a decision as to what is moral or what is the next step. If you realize it, it's always pointing to what the next step is. You have to understand what the next step is. It comes up with its own output. You don't choose the output. It comes up with its own output. That's what's crazy about the balance that exists. Now, I think that that's already happening on a metaphysical level. Like everything is balancing itself anyway. Like if you think about it, look at our societies. There's so many different like views, and they're all contradictory, right? And yet we have stability in the West. We've right. Not now. We have like a huge culture war. But in the last 100 years, we've shown that balance emerges out of contradiction. Therefore, to me, that's the beauty of the paradoxism. I mean, for some reason, paradoxes render everything compatible, even though they're contradictory. They're both contradictory and compatible because there's a superposition. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So if we realize that, and people like public intellectuals and stuff like that can apply this superposition worldview to their imperfect structures, of course, they'll always be imperfect. Perhaps we can transcend and like reach, like, I don't know if you saw Arrival, the movie, the alien movie.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
That movie was mind blowing. Like these aliens see everything circular, right? Like time is accessed in a circular manner, and their language works that way, which is, you and I are describing things in a different way, which is almost circular in sometimes. So I think that if there was a next evolution, it'll be that. Like I can imagine that next evolution in intelligent life in this universe would necessarily create or it would function in a superposition type manner. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's crazy.
I know. Like, how do we get on freaking Kurt's channel though?
Well, I mean,
see with Kurt, you almost have to be a PhD or have sold 1 million books.
No, right? I don't think so. There's a guy named Tyler Goldstein. I don't think you're part of the Discord. You should.
No, I harass Tyler quite often, but he doesn't really want to engage that much with me.
No, I mean, I haven't talked to him yet, but like he has his own theory of everything, and he's not a public intellectual and all that, and he has his own section. Yeah, well, not yet, but he still has his own theory of it. He's listed in like the 11 theories of everything in the Discord. So like,
I liked it because he didn't. He put forth the criteria of what a theory should actually be. He didn't put forth the theory. He just put forth the theory of what it should be. And then I did a reaction video of it, of course, telling him that mine was the one.
Yeah. Well, the way he says, well, because you went against what he said there. That's why.
What I'm finding is that people who are working on their own thing will not shift over and say, oh, theirs is better, I'm going to go with this guy. They just won't.
No, but this is what Tyler was talking about in his video. It's not about better. It's
but
about.
It is.
No,
let's say there are more succinct models, right? There are models of complete fucking nonsense. And then there are models that go, oh, right.
There's a hierarchy of value that you can create, and you can cross-reference it to say that there are some theories that are better than others. But ultimately, what I think he was getting at is that if a theory, as shitty as it is, has a facet of truth or some kind of component that adds to the contributes to the knowledge of the overall system, then at that point there's an ecosystem kind of effect where it's still valuable.
What about the finality of it? What about like contributing to what purpose, right? Like,
well, that's the beauty. Like, that's why Kurt has started his channel. He's trying to see how is there a finale. Maybe it'll emerge if it's an ecosystem of different ideas, no matter whether they're like far out non-academics kooks like you and I don't know about you, but I'm a high school dropout. And so like,
nice.
You know what I mean? And I think he's been done pretty well he hasn't interviewed us yet, but this contest, I believe, is the first step into going towards seeing, hey, what can I extract from the general public? And I have David, you spoke to David, that's what he's doing essentially. Yeah. He's trying to find, hey, how much can I really, like, he's studying everyone and everything to see, hey, maybe I can be the guy, if I study enough of all these theories, I could be the guy to like see the universal aspect of it, right? I don't know. I think he's doing that.
I think he wants to interview everyone. I don't know. Yeah. There's like 44. Jesus.
Yeah. So, I don't know, man. I think I think we are in very special times. We're heading towards something interesting for sure. I don't know. Tyler, so I'm not supposed to, I don't know if this isn't going to go live. I don't know. We're not going to share it. I don't think it's going to do anything. Anyway, I'm part of the top 10.
I'm not going to post this. So
no, you can post it. I can post it too. I'm going to post it. So I don't have a channel yet, but I found out through the grapevine that I'm in the top 10 of the contest. So I'm hoping that if my theory, if I win one of the 5 spots, that then I do get a chance to like present my philosophy and discuss my ideas, and then I think we can bring what you and I are kind of like talking about to the table. And that's why I created a website, and it details things in very clean, simple manner. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So what's so you are obviously including religion or spirituality in your theory, right?
Oh, I haven't even talked to you about my philosophy. That's the crazy part. Like, there's so much to it. Like, not that much, but it's substantial. Like, I'm very clean. I don't talk about
no loose ends. Yeah, like my theory, to me, in my mind, my theory has no loose ends. They're all tied together, and it all makes complete fucking sense. Right down to the number system being a message, and why it goes on for infinity without ever concluding, right? Is because it's the incorrect interpretation of the message, right? Like,
but did
you watch my last video of my explanation of the theory of enlightenment?
No, I'm gonna watch it though. And here's if I can make this comment for you, Roy. Like, I think you have a very integrated theory, but I think where you might discredit yourself with people will be by when you make statements like that, like the error. It's just that we are misinterpreting the message. this is a claim of authority and you have to back that up, right? So like you might very well be right. I mean, I think we do misinterpret. That's the whole point. We're misinterpreting things all the time. But when you say that, people I don't think jump to what I just said, which is the fact that yes, it's all about misinterpretations, and you're just saying, well, here's how we don't misinterpret reality in this way. I think so. I think these little caveats are very important so that you know what I mean. But also the samsara thing, I really do think that, especially because you are using a religious term, and people are like, okay, yeah, well, we know about that, and they just sort of shift it aside, even though it has value and it is true. But if you make these claims that there's a game we have to get out of the game, people will just say, okay, that's woo-woo, and they won't actually realize that, because maybe it's not about getting in or out of the game. See, your interpretation of reality is correct, but then when you're talking about purpose, that's where everyone's gonna fuck up, because purpose is so like there's purpose and there's absolute purpose, and that's why I think I'm excited. I think I haven't. If you watch my video, I say at the end I could explain absolute purpose, but then I'd start to describe everything in this theory of everything, and that would take an infinity of time. Well, the second video does talk about. I mean, I wasn't lying there. I have a concept of how we can understand absolute purpose to release us from this need to come up with a story to have a reason. And I mean, it's mind blowing. And I can put you through it if you want. It's a small thought experiment.
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
It better end up in this transcendence of thought, though.
Well, I don't know. Let's see it. Maybe you can help me with that.
Okay.
All right. So again, you'll either like this or you won't like this, but you have to use the dualistic functioning because we function through dualism. Okay.
Right.
So to understand something,
that dualism is the finger, right?
Yes, it's the finger. Okay. So in order to understand something, it actually is very helpful to find out what its opposite is, its antithesis.
Okay. Other of or other than?
That's what we're gonna find out.
Yeah.
So, for example, like what's the opposite of hot? Cold. Opposite of up and down. But then we're talking about there needs to be relativity there and all that.
The relativity to each other, though, right?
Exactly. But here's what I'm trying to say. That's not important. The point is, if you want to understand something, you typically use duality, and you have to understand the functioning of how duality and relativity fit together. And I also do that, but it's not really for the thought experiment. It doesn't matter. So the question is, what is the antithesis? I think instead of opposite, the best term to use would be the antithesis. What is the antithesis of purpose? Now, I've asked many people, and you can come up with different answers. If you want to take a moment, give me what is the opposite of purpose? You want to give it a shot?
The opposite of purpose. Well, the word chaos came in, but that's not exactly
order. Order is the opposite of chaos, so it can't be that, right?
Yeah. That's one. Right. Well, maybe there isn't a word set up for that. Maybe the language doesn't even allow that. See, this is another thing about language, is that it's hardwired to direct consciousness in a certain way. And if you want to go another way, the language isn't fucking there. So you can't, it doesn't even allow you to go the other way.
Now, you're right. But when it comes to purpose, we're talking about contingencies. And when we're talking about contingencies, and also there's two types of purpose. There's finite and there's absolute. And here's where I think you're really going to like this. If we just try to deal with regular purpose to get it off the table, here's what regular purpose is. It's tied to the physics, or if you look at it on a timeline.
It's causality. Purpose
causality.
Is causality.
Exactly.
Right?
Causality.
I'm doing this in order to get this.
Exactly. It's just two steps on the timeline, the purpose, like the starting point, end point, and this goes on forever, right? It's part of the number line.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And out of that emerges.
That's relative purpose.
Exactly. Relative purpose. And out of that emerges meaning. Okay, cool. Then you have to ask, what's the absolute purpose of that? Like, why that?
Exactly. Right? I've done that. Right. I've done this. Yeah, of course I've done this. Like, what is the effect of so the cause is birth and the effect is death. But what is the purpose of all that?
Yeah. What's the purpose of everything? And then we can say
it's of the life itself. Yeah.
Or what's the purpose? We could say is to release ourselves from it. But again, to me, here's where, because we're talking about absolute purpose for everything, I don't think it's necessarily that we just don't have a word to place at the opposite of purpose. And so we'll continue. Some friends have told me it's meaninglessness, and I say, well, no, meaninglessness has its opposite, it's meaning. So you keep looking at these dualities and you put them together and you realize they're not dual, that it's just one thing. It's one thing, one thing, one thing. And everything gets paired up in these nice little groups. And then I realized something. It just kind of dawned on me. I realized, okay, wait. If I put something on as the antithesis of purpose, it immediately takes on purpose, which is to be the opposite of purpose. So it's the negation. Like you said, it can't be a negation there. And therefore, purpose, absolute purpose, cannot have an antithesis. And I was like, whoa, okay, wait. What does it mean if absolute purpose does not have an antithesis? It makes it an axiom. And when you're looking at an axiom, you can't, it releases you from language. It releases you from duality. That's why, I mean, that's the beauty of an axiom, right? I mean, it's so fundamental. It's so a priori. It releases you from this duality.
Yeah, what's the authority to say that that's an official truth?
But I mean, you can say that about everything.
Oh, now it's an axiom, and now we can just start from here.
No, but here's the thing. I mean, we can say that about everything always. Yeah. That's radical skepticism, right? But here's what I mean. So like, if we continue down that train, if there's no, if absolute purpose has no antithesis and it's axiomatic, then there's no need to ask the question what absolute purpose is, right? You can say it's axiomatic. It's kind of like you could say it this way, for if you really want to have like a meaning to it, because humans can't stand to be without meaning. Because the whole reason for purpose, regular purpose, relative purpose, is meaning. That's how it emerges, through purpose. If my purpose is to save people's lives, I'm a doctor, I feel meaning. I feel fulfilled from that, right? But what's the purpose of them going on to live? Well, so that they can make their families happy and so on and so forth. And so you could say that absolute purpose
exists. Meaning is probably a better word than purpose, though. Meaning is maybe a better word.
Yes, but I mean, I think they're different, but there's so they're very interconnected. But the point is, you could say, if you really wanted meaning, that absolute purpose exists so that to justify as a foundation. It exists in order for relative purpose to exist. Now, that's a teleology. And now a lot of people in the philosophical community would be like, well, teleologies, you can't accept those as truth. And, it's bullshit and that's it. And also people, like I said, they'll never be satisfied. I mean, you'll drive yourself crazy, literally. I mean, Cantor did, Boltzmann did. Anyone who looked at infinity and tried to find his purpose just went nuts. So, to me, you either accept that absolute purpose is just a human thing and you're trying to look for a finality, and it is not necessary. It doesn't make sense to have a finality because infinity is infinity and there is no finality. I mean, the finality is that there is no finality, and you either accept that or you go drive yourself nuts. Or you can say what I just said. It gives you a bit of a hook into meaning, which is, well, the reason for absolute purpose to exist is for regular purpose to exist, for us to have relative purpose, so that we can actually have meaning. It's for meaning to be inherent, But that's the closest I've gotten, and I think that's the cleanest it can be.
It's that question has to conclude thought. Like, what is the purpose? Like, if you ask, what is the purpose of thought?
Right.
Like, holy shit, what kind of a rabbit hole is that, right?
It depends on how you define thought.
Well, again, the voice in your head, right? To me,
but I don't think it's a good definition.
What is the purpose of all that?
Yeah.
Right?
To me,
it makes more sense that it's just it's the next cycle of samsara. Yeah. That's the purpose of thought. Maya is using it to keep us in the game, because Maya is the opponent in the game.
Yeah, but we are Maya. So what do you mean by keep us in the game, right? Is it a game with itself, or is it a game with us? And again, there's same thing there. Where do you get the opportunity to say that?
Us, you mean James and Roy, right? Yeah. Not thought. right?
Yeah, but thought, like, to me, thought is inseparable. It's interchangeable with consciousness, truth, reality. I mean, at some point, if you really remove yourself from language and all differentiation, you will stop differentiating thought as well. You'll say that it is everything anyway. I mean, there's no difference between thought and fundamental truth and absolute. This is why you have to read the Pleroma. I mean, the Pleroma is the way that Jung taught. It's an interesting story. It's about Basilius, anyway, some kind of character, and the dead come out in Jerusalem, and they go to this wise man, and they're asking him. They want the answers now. They're dead, so they're like, now we want the answers. Everything we've been asking about when we were alive. And he gives them these sermons. He gives them 7 sermons to describe everything that we're talking about here, and like all the questions that we have. And it's mind fucking blowing. I mean, it is what you're gonna resonate with it, and it's just, it makes a lot of the things we're talking about will the ends, the loose ends will be tied. I guarantee you. And after that, I think you'll realize that there's all we can do is fulfill our relative purposes. And what's strange with guys like you and I is that our relative purpose is so, it's literally tied to this absolute,
to the absolute purpose. The
yes,
relative purpose is to realize the absolute purpose.
Exactly. And that is just,
that changes the whole life. That changes your whole life.
It changes your whole life. It's not for everyone. And
No.
it's not, and it's not meant to be for everyone. It really is just these special cases.
Yeah. Again, it was Ramana Maharshi that did it for me, because it's the transcendence of thought. You can't, there will never be any system of thought that concludes all thought, right? It'll never answer the questioning to such a degree that there will no longer be questions. There will no longer be questions, right? So that's, again, like I said half an hour ago, is the purpose that when you realize the purpose of thought, let's say the purpose of thought, or traveling down the road of thought, is to realize that it is inconclusive and it never ends. So you have to choose when to end it, right? So the theory of everything points out that no theory will ever conclude, and that's the theory of everything. So then you have to just sit in meditation. That's basically it. Like, that's,
you're right. But here's the thing, like, okay, so now you go and you tell that to the world.
You have to choose. Like, I've chosen, my metaphor is mine, right? Like, mine is it. It's the toe, because, well, I've kind of found enlightenment before that, and then I worked on the theory to describe what my state is. But to me,
we've known this.
I'm looking for the 1 in a million people who actually fucking get this, right?
But humanity has known what we're talking about, and has, for a long. When I say humanity, I mean, like, there's many people in humanity who have known this. Some religions have known it. There's people in the Amazon. I'm moving to Colombia in 3 weeks, actually. So, like, we've known this shit for a long fucking time. Like, this description, that's what I'm trying to say, is like, okay, there's, I mean, you might know of what a bodhisattva is if you're into Hindu. Okay, so there's some people who are meant to shepherd people into enlightenment, right? They're not fully enlightened. They're not sitting on the mountain, like I said. And there are some, like, there's no need to do what you and I are doing, but what we're doing is necessary. We are, in a sense, bodhisattvas. We're like trying to, that's our purpose. That's our relative purpose, really. And so that's what I'm trying to say is if your relative purpose is just to set up satsangs for people to just practice, being enlightened, then you really have nothing to do. You don't have to try to convince, these theories of everything communities to like, because, they're not interested. They're interested more in the unification of physics and quantum physics kind of stuff. It's not really relevant. And that's why I'm interested in, like, what I'm trying to do is trying to create a reconciliation between those, like, material reductionists and the consciousness-based theories of everything. How can we how can we create a practicality? How can we be pragmatic by bringing these two worlds together? That's how I encompass my theory of everything. And I necessarily do it through paradoxes, because paradoxes renders things compatible. That's the whole point. You take two contradictory things, and it seems contradictory, but to me it's compatible. Everything has to be compatible. So like your theory with the theories of everything through physics and all that stuff, that can be compatible too. That
I believe so, but
yeah.
Yeah.
But see, like to me, that's what I would be doing. I'd be trying to like, so if I can bring the message of the side that you're talking about to what they're talking about, that's what my theory is. It renders that compatible. How can the world be conscious of the non-conceptuality? I kind of like that term that you've come up with.
Thank you.
And so how do we come up with a world? How can we create a world where people are playing the game instead of trying to remove themselves from the game, as you put it? But by being aware that it's a game, and how can we capitalize on that? Like, how can we apply?
Knowing the rules of the game will be really good, right? You don't even have to make some sort of assumption about why the game is, but there seems to be rules, and I think Taoism does a really good job, like really succinctly. You can't have a high without a low, right? Like, and what you've realized, and what most people, even the ones that are really, really smart, they don't understand the superposition thing that you do, right? You get what my triune model is expressing, where most people don't. It's so simple and obvious that it goes beyond them somehow. But
that's what I was saying. It's
the superposition is the essential part. And the essential part is that the superposition is the reality, right? And then the appearances arise from that. You don't put these two things, the appearances, together to make the reality. The appearances arise from the reality, right? Depending upon the bias of your attention. Again, I hope that you recognize the importance of the focus of your attention, right? That's what all of it is. Maya that is the commodity of the universe. Maya is vying for your attention. That's it, right? So your attention is utmost, and that's why meditation is so important, because it's pointing people, like it's showing them that they can shift their focus. Like you're not just an automaton. Like you can actually, maybe that's the only free will that we have, right? Is that where we put our focus in this certain frame in this movie, right? We can't get out of this frame, but we can choose where we put our awareness within this frame.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right, and I just think like the reason for why it's doing that. I mean, why didn't it just create, or why did it do that? It's the same thing that we've been asking Christians forever, right? Like, why did God create a world that has evil in it anyway? There's a lot of contradiction.
See, again, this really, to me, it really fits, right? Like if it is a game, then that kind of, if it's not so real, then that would make sense if it's just a video game, right?
But that's what I'm trying to say, is like, if we use the word game, we're just doing the same thing, which is to like come up with an explanation that's like what's the word I'm looking for? In any case, it's an explanation. It's a placeholder, and when you go behind it and you try to understand what do you mean by game, I mean, it's just another thing. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say, is I don't think we can look at it as a game, because if we say that, then we ask, well, why? It's the infinitely regressive question. What's the purpose of the game? Entertainment, yes, but how do you know that to be the truth, right?
At some point, as well as I do, at some point there is a leap of faith, right?
Yes,
I
and the leap of faith,
prove it to you that this is the truth.
Yes, but I think the leap of faith is so close. Like, you're asking people to do a leap of faith, which I think there's a better one right next to it. Instead of it being entertainment or to win the game or to get out of it, it's to be complete, to fulfill infinity, to be.
And then complete. What happens?
There's nothing happening.
What do you mean?
Everything is already complete.
Well, then what?
If people don't like that, they don't like that. There's no, because they feel that exactly they don't have an absolute purpose. They're like, no, I need, if I need a game to get out of, and that's what I'm saying. There is no game to get out of. It's complete. There's nothing. That's
but then
another.
Why is there suffering? Why is there searching? Why are you searching if there's nothing to do?
Why does the color green exist? There's all these questions. We can ask all this, but the point is, it's all because it's necessary to be complete. That's the answer to me. It's complete. That's why.
Right. So it's necessary to be complete, but again, so where did the incompleteness come from, and why is it there?
Yes, and to me, that's the infinitely regressive question you're talking about. I just think that mine is a bit cleaner than it's a game that you have to get out of. Mine is simply,
but yours doesn't have a conclusion. That's the only problem, is that none of these other ones have any conclusion, whereas mine does, because I've got the balls to say it.
No, because that is a conclusion. Everything is complete. That is a conclusion. It's just I don't give you a gate that allows you to get to the conclusion. People like that. They want to get to it. And there's nothing to get to. That's the point. That's just another thought. It's to get out of the game. That's just another thought. It's complete. That's the answer.
Is suffering a thought? When you don't want what's happening to be happening, is that something? And is there a reason for that?
Yeah. Everything you're saying makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just the purpose of that.
You just don't want to make the leap with me. Take my hand. Come with me. Come on.
No, it's a different leap. No. Mine is a leap. For me, everything you're saying makes sense. It's where you say, what's the purpose of that? And you saying the purpose of that is to get out of the game. Like, what's the purpose of releasing yourself from suffering? Because that's a game. And I'm saying, no, it's not about a game to win. It's about everything being complete. Everything is complete. There is no nothing to do. There is no absolute purpose.
Is to realize the completion that is.
Yes.
I agree.
Exactly.
I agree.
So
and then
it's a
on
semantic
that
difference.
Something changes. You just don't keep going on the way we're going on with another life with more questions. So so I agree with you, but I agree, but I also say that something happens upon that changes all of this. When you realize that there's completion, you end up sitting in this fucking chair looking out that window. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And you may be correct in the sense that there is a game or some act that has to be done or non-act, which is to continue the completion, right? Or whatever, or to be complete. So that's what I'm saying. I just think that the language I'm trying to bring to you, to the table, is to make you more legitimate, so that people aren't, because you're
trying to get me to soften my view and soften my approach to get more people in, and I don't give a fuck about that. So I appreciate it, and I understand what you're saying, but I'm not going to adapt. I can't adapt anything. This is what I see as clearly as I see that lake.
Well, right? No, if I'm being honest, I don't think it's necessarily just about making you more legitimate. I do think that it's an error to use that language or see that concept that it's a game to get out of, precisely because then it prolongs someone's thought cancer or whatever.
Well, it depends where they're at. I guess it depends on the ripening of the fruit, right? Again, it's another analogy. And again, I'm okay if a dozen people get this, because the dozen people that get this at such a level, right? Like the deepest level possible. And it's about quality rather than quantity. So I understand that there won't be a lot of people following this, but the people that do, the quality of that understanding will be so deep. Right.
Yeah, that's true. And again, I think we do have different relative purposes too. Like that's your purpose. I'm just trying to see how can I extract practicality from this fundamental reality that we've realized.
No, they can live in harmony for sure. I appreciate what you're doing for sure.
I'm just playing the game. I'm deciding to stay in the simulation and playing it. You know?
Yeah. And again, that's fine. There's nothing fucking wrong with that. I'm not saying that my way's better. It's just the other way, right? It's just the other
Right.
of, I guess. Yeah.
Pretty amazing stuff. It's kind of an insane journey. I mean, people listening to this would probably think we're on some kind of mushrooms or something.
No, well, not. I don't think
Not the people I hang out with. I know a lot of
the
people
TOE gang. I don't think would. Well, some of them would. But I think Tyler would be in on this. Like, I would love to get a three-way with Tyler.
I think Kurt is quite open-minded though.
Yeah, but Kurt went there, but he freaked out. Like, Kurt started going down the spiritual path, and he had that one existential angst thing, and he freaked out, and he's been staying away from the spiritual part. Even though at the beginning of the year he said, at the end of the year, I'm going to move towards more Eastern, philosophies, and he's not, because he freaked out. Like, he's starting to realize. So, and that's a scary place. I love Donald Hoffman because he brought this up when Donald Hoffman and John Vervaeke. Yeah.
You saw that too?
Yeah. So John gave him sort of a whitewash kind of and then Donald came in, because Donald meditates for 3 hours every fucking day. So he gets the stillness. And he was like straight up with Kurt, and he said, no, this is every day I expect to experience some discomfort, right? Like, you are dying before you're dying, right? Like, you are coming to realization of all of the illusion. And of course, he didn't downplay it or soft it over and for Kurt. It was like, this is the path. Everyone goes through this, Kurt. You're going to have to deal with this eventually.
Yeah, Hoffman is great because I think he's again trying to extract practicality, some kind of pragmatic, system or whatever, some utility from.
I don't know if you can do it though. Like, I think you just need to scrap the whole fucking thing. Right? From my perspective, he is using a broken model. Well, how can you use a broken system to try to come up with something that works? Right? So again,
could be.
I mean, way back at the very, very start, something went awry.
Yeah,
and you can't use that model anymore because it's been proven to be broken.
His model might be broken, but it might still be, like, again, for the purposes of what? For your purposes, there would be no playing the game at all. I mean, it's not about using a model to begin with, but he's trying to see how we can get to a next level of physics. Now, it might lead him to realizing, yeah, okay, my model is false altogether because all I'm caring about is to transcend. But if he's trying to find a new level of physics, there maybe he will find one that's another kind of dimension in some way, and that'll be something we can explore, and there'll be practicality, and people can continue playing the game. But ultimately, I think this is where there's a bifurcation. You have to choose: am I sitting on the mountain, or am I going to play the game, or am I going to help people go and sit on the mountain? And that's my game. And I think those are the three options. I think you're sitting on the mountain, and you think everyone might, or might want to sit on the mountain. And some people are saying, I want to play the game, but I want to play it better. And I'm saying, well, let's make those two compatible. Let's see if we could create a world where there are people who can be led towards the mountain, and there are people who can play the game better at the same time.
Great. Yeah, it's all perfect the way it is, for sure.
I mean, I think that's the beauty of it. I mean, there's already perfection. It's all complete. It's all happening. It's all manifesting anyway. This is the beauty of it. So, to get a bit more personal before I go, it's already 1 a.m. here. So you're from Canada. I'm astounded by how much raw power intellectually and spiritually is coming from Canada. I mean, you've got big names like Vervaeke and Peterson and Kurtz. Kurt's a wicked genius. So I don't know, man. It's what do you have anything to say about that, or
why? Were you born in Canada or raised, or how long did you stay?
Born and raised. I've been traveling for the last 4 years now. I'm 31, so like I'm Canadian. I was born in Quebec, but I grew up in Toronto.
Oh yeah.
I'm French Canadian though. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Canadians are fucking cool though. Like, you know, we're. I don't know. It seems like we're pretty well balanced for some reason.
I have a thing you might like. I do have a reason. I think the reason is like you see like people like
you and always having to have a reason for everything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, you as well, man. The reason is to get out of the game, right? Like I said, humans are reason oriented.
Just shitting you, brother.
It's all good. But so like I think there's well, not I think there's Vervaeke says it too, but massive identity crisis on the planet. And so like countries like Canada that are super mosaic and there's like an interplay between different cultures and identities and all that, we have a better balance. We have a more, we're exposed. Like I'm living in Tunisia right now, right? It's a closed country. Like there's barely any white people walking around, right? So like when you start to understand that it's not everyone on the planet that has access to different ideas, different people, different perspectives like we do in Canada, that you realize that it makes sense that in diverse places you'll have people who have the necessary experience to come up with these ideas, because you have a window into the world, you have a window into multiple things when you live in a place like Canada. So yeah, that's
and also view. I think there's something to do with recognizing cycles, because you know, the closer you get to the equator, well, there's no cycles anymore. It's always the same fucking thing every day, right? Right?
That's interesting.
And this is my girlfriend Paige. She says that, oh, I let it slip. She says that I think it must be the insanity increases the closer you get to the equator too. So I think it has something to do with recognizing cycles.
Yeah.
I think it has something to do with that too, and hardship, right? Like it's fucking cold out, right? Like it's not always 70 or 28 degrees, and you know, yeah.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
Well, yeah. You better get, man.
Yeah, I'm getting quite tired, and but it's been a pleasure. I really enjoy.
Yeah, this has been one of the good ones for sure. Like I could definitely talk with you again if you wanted to. I don't know about what, but
well, there's tons to talk. I mean, for you, there's not much else because that's the whole point. It's just escape. But I do have a lot in my philosophy, and I'd love to run it by you and get your opinion and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, and shit, we didn't even talk about screenplays.
That too. Oh yeah, there's so much more that we can discuss. So
let's do it again, James.
Sounds good, man. So I'll send you that through WeTransfer probably tomorrow.
Send me what?
This recording.
How do you do it?
WeTransfer. It's like a sharing website. Like you can share files, larger files, and it's a download link. You can download it's like an hour 42 right now. So.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'd appreciate that. I'll definitely post it because this is worth posting. Yeah.
And we'll stay in touch, and then I'll send you my website too. I haven't made it public yet, but I'd like to get your opinion and see what.
Awesome, and I'll watch that video. It's called I think the explanation of the theory of enlightenment. And if you want, I can actually send the actual text to you as well.
Okay. Yeah. Send me anything that you have, like anything more that you have, like descriptions and things that I don't know about your theory yet.
Okay.
And that would be great. So I can.
Yeah, I'll send you the theory directly. Just
sounds good.
Right on, man. It's been great.
Thanks a lot, Roy. Take care. Have a good night.
Take it easy.